Hey, how's it going, Warner?
Matthew, good seeing you again. Yeah, it's going well. Before we get to our conversation today, is um, just want to share two very interesting
Ooh, I
conversations
love
I
gifts.
had with founders.
Oh no, they're the worst.
And you, well, they can be, and also, I think there's a certain expectation that profiles needs to fit. That founders needs to fit a certain profile. And the reason why these two were interesting is they don't fit the profile at all. And as an example, this morning I had a conversation. We've been talking to each other for probably the last 6, 8 weeks. He's a person with disabilities. He's creating a solution, an app in that space. He's more dedicated than any of the other founders I'm working with. He hits his milestones. He has spoken to 60 enterprise clients already, and this is in the last 6 weeks. And he is now finalizing his packages. He's going to experiment with that. But you know, it's encouraging to talk to somebody like that because I asked him kind of what ARR are you heading for? What do you think is possible? And he gave me a very realistic, doable number. And I walked out of that meeting and I just felt encouraged again, because there's also conversations that you have with founders where you think, yeah, next time when you walk in there, you're going to wear a T-shirt that says scalable or a cap that says scalable because they don't understand what scalable means, and or they think their idea is scalable, and all I can see is maybe 50 units, and this guy just hit it out of the park. It was really encouraging, and for somebody like that, I mean, I'm going to introduce him to you as well. But for somebody like that, I think both you and I will go out of our way to help him with introductions, networking,
Absolutely.
because he's willing to do it, and uh, he's
Can I
hardcore
ask an
committed.
obnoxious
Yes,
question?
please do.
Does he have any sales right now?
Yes, he does.
Okay, good. Because
Yes, he does.
the example that I use,
That's a yes. Go
there's an
ahead.
example I use with this kind of founder that's like a real go-getter, likes to have lots of meetings, write down
Yes,
documents,
yes.
and be
Yeah,
able to
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
come
yeah,
up with all
yeah, yeah,
kinds of
yeah.
ideas and plans and stuff. And then there was a war movie that I watched. I forget the name of it now. The war movie was, it shows like this young boy and he hears about World War II's going to happen. He hears about World War One from his dad. He's growing up. Then he like
Yeah.
joins the military. He goes through like all this whole thing about him training, like growing up to be a
Yes.
man,
Yeah.
and then he gets
Yeah.
deployed, and it's like his first battle. He hears the whistle
Yes.
blow and it's like charge, and then they charge, and he gets shot in the eye, and then the screen goes black and credits roll, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And like
Okay.
the point of this is like no matter how much you plan, no matter how much you mentally
Yeah.
prepare, no matter how much you sit there and go like I'm ready for this, the moment of first contact is the thing that determines survival from failure.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. 100%. So, yes, look, I'm not going to quote numbers, but he's got a sales funnel. He's got some sales coming in.
Oh,
His
it's good.
revenues are increasing. Some interesting feedback is he even had some enterprise clients saying to him, "You can charge more for this because we pay 20% to do this, and we're willing to pay you more for the problem that you're solving for us."
Oh, that's good.
Um, Again, I can't say names, but one of the very well-known media companies in Canada also invited them onto their podcast, where he can
Right
also
on.
talk about his business, so, and he also has, again, and you and I know how difficult these things are. He also has some firm letters of commitment and intent from a number of clients that says, we like what you showed us. We're definitely interested. If you can get this and this in place, here's our letter of intent, we'll sign up. So, but the thing that I like most about him, and again, you and I know so many different founders, is you and I spoke about it briefly a few weeks ago. We said the founder needs to be a successful founder needs to be a little bit mad, but at the end of the day, he needs to be or she needs to be incredibly committed. It's the mindset that drives. the success. And even if this guy is going to have a setback here or there, he's grown up with setbacks his whole life. It drives a mindset where he's just never given up. So yeah, uh, it was encouraging. It was a little bit out of the ordinary, and it's a really encouraging
That's probably how
startup. We'll
you know
see
you
where that
get a
goes to.
real founder. Then is the moment that you see us behaving like weirdos. We're kind of crazy with our commitment to
Yes,
the idea, and we have like a long-winded story about ourselves. That's usually like good signs that you got yourself a quality founder.
yes, exactly. And one other example, again, a conversation I had the other day, uh, and kind of what led up to the conversation is they were looking for some funding to develop an app. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, um, if you and I had a dollar every time we had that conversation, can you imagine? But in any case, and his app was to help people interpret their dreams. And I'm thinking like, yeah, okay, where is this going to? And within 15 minutes, I realized that he has a subreddit with 300,000 followers.
Oh, that's beautiful then.
Exactly. So again, Matthew, the last week or two, I love those kind of conversations because I think it brings something different to the table instead of the normal vanilla approach of coaching people through something.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, weren't we supposed to talk about VCs today, though?
Yes, we are. I just thought I wanted to get this off my chest because I really enjoyed both of those.
Yeah, no, no. It's
But
like,
yes,
yeah, like listen, us founders, we go through like these weird transformative journeys where a lot of us think that we have a solution to a problem, and then we get beat down as soon as we go to market. And we
yes,
learn, we get some scars, we learn from that, and we try it again. We just get better and better at doing it every time.
yep. Well, look, for me, before we get going, if somebody can laugh at themselves, for stuff that they've done or mistakes, I'm interested, because I think experience and a few scars brings that ability
Yeah,
to
you got to
kind
be
of
able to
laugh at
laugh about
yourself.
it.
Yeah, but not give up. But yeah, you should be able to sometimes see, yeah, this was funny in hindsight, or this was really stupid in hindsight. You decide.
It's both.
Oh yeah, it can be. It can be. Any case, yep. So fire away.
So, what is venture capital? We talked about this before, but I feel like we didn't hone in on like what is it specifically. We kind of dabbled in like it's kind of private equity, it's orchestrated by private
Hmm.
equity. It is a
Hmm.
form of capital, it's a form of financing out there. It's
Correct.
different from a
Correct.
bank loan, different from a grant, different
Very
from
different.
everything else. Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
Us founders are kind of honeyed or excited to hear the idea of a venture capitalist investing in our idea, investing in our startup. And that's
Hmm.
heavily pushed by most incubators is they want to see VCs in there talking to startups, see the
Yes, they
finance
do.
happening. Why? Why is venture capital so important to the startup community? And to that, why are there so many gosh darn VCs out there, Werner?
Why are there so many?
Yeah.
Um, Good question. So let me start by kind of just taking it a step back in terms of what venture capital is. So very simple. If you have any startup that's tech or tech enabled or tech driven or anything related to science or tech, uh, you're going to look at venture capital. So the first thing first is to get the right language. Don't say you're looking for investors because investors is a very broad subject. You're specifically talking to venture capital investors, nobody else.
Yeah.
The venture capital model was born initially in Silicon Valley. You and I both know that, and it was it was it started out of the realization that these startup companies, because most of them don't have proof of concept, it's an idea, Most of them don't have any revenues. Uh, if you're lucky, they might have an idea of who their customers are, but there were no ways of financing those startups. Banks simply won't touch it. Grants can only go so far, and grants is not, I'm going to use the word, a competitive instrument. A grant doesn't drive action, a competitive spirit to get things done. So it was born out of a need to find ways of financing these startups that simply didn't exist. So that's kind of where it started off. Um, it had its boom days about 10, 12 years ago, where, again, it's important for people to understand where you could have an idea, pitch it to these venture capitalists, venture capital investors, and based on your pitch deck and your idea and who you are, they would then assess, evaluate the opportunity that your startup present and decide to provide you some funding. That has changed a little bit, and we can come to that a little bit
Oh yeah.
later. However, something else that founders also need to understand that VC funding, so VC funding is part of private equity. It's a subset of private equity funding. Private equity funding is simply, or VC funding is simply people investing in companies that's not listed. Uh, uh, that's the simplest definition of it. Uh, However, where VC funds startups, innovative companies, etc., the private equity, which some people would hear about as well, is more interested in established businesses, solid cash flow, etc. However, private equity tends to be one or two rounds of investment, whereas VC, which we are talking about today, can be 4 or 5 different rounds of investment. It depends on the funding journey. Um, VC is also by far more flexible and dynamic, and they have far more tools, simply because each startup is different. It needs to work in a different way. Then again, your private equity leveraged buyout in investors. Venture capital is also completely or mostly equity funded, whereas private equity is mostly debt funded. So what does that mean for a startup founder? The first thing first is that they need to understand the journey, from an idea, in other words, the funding journey from an idea to product market fit to different levels of business growth and development. So normally what starts with a startup is that they start with a incubator that could either be government funded or privately funded or a combination of both. This incubator will provide them, if they're successful, or this incubator will require them to complete a certain program with the incubator. So first they need to apply. Not everybody gets accepted. Those that gets accepted into the incubator then needs to do a specific program. Now there's different incubators. Some uh, don't care if you continue with your full-time job and do this part-time.
Mm-hmm.
Some requires you to leave your job and commit fully to a 4-month program or a 6-month program. There's different models. Also, the job of the incubator is to help you through the process of turning your idea into a commercial, into a business that has some traction, some level of traction. Again, the level of traction differs in terms of what the incubators are looking for.
And
The incubator,
it's
yep,
just to jump in for a second.
sure,
So the funnel is that startups go to incubators. If you're looking for,
correct,
like, assuming that you're a startup that's not bootstrapped, you want VC
yep,
money, you want to
yep,
participate in the system,
yep,
you go find an incubator. You join. There's different commitment levels, as you mentioned.
correct,
With that, there's a program. And the program is to build traction. Normally, from what I've seen from the programs, is there's like an education piece to
yes,
educate
there's,
you on, like, this is, I know as weird as it sounds, this is what this journey is going to look like. I hope you're in.
Yes,
Hope buckle up, buddy, because you're in for quite a
correct,
wild ride.
correct.
And there's going to be some education with regards to marketing, sales, product development, all of that stuff,
Correct.
just to make sure that the founders are, even if they've done this a few times, like myself, you're kind of up to date on modern techniques and you're up to date on like what's
Yes.
going on.
Mm-hmm.
Just because if you start pulling out like waterfall development cycles from like 30 years ago, it's like, okay, well, we got more modern techniques. I'll tell you what a scrum is.
Yep. By the way, you had me worried there when you mentioned the waterfall. I thought, Matthew,
That stuff was antiquated when I took computer science.
please,
Like,
please, because
that
you had me going there. I thought, no, 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 no. Okay,
yeah, we were,
got
we
it.
were educated never to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so it sounds like there's an entire kind of a funnel process that was designed and set
Yes.
up for startups to go through. Was that designed by VCs? Was that designed by government? Like a combination of private public?
A bit of both. There's also, and I don't want to go into the detail about this, but there's also a substantial difference in terms of how that collaboration between VCs and incubators function in the States versus Canada versus Europe.
Oh, agreed for sure.
Yeah. So in Canada, as an example, there's a much larger government component. In the States, a much larger private sector component, and in Europe, probably a bit of a balance between the two. However, you know, I'm not here to punt any incubator or any program. What I can advise founders to do, though, is that you're 100% right. There's a program component. However, it's very difficult to differentiate that program component because it's all pretty much the same in terms of content and kind of the process. What you do want to look at when it comes to incubators, and you do have a choice, is you want to specifically look at the mentors, coaches, and advisors that is part of their team. And secondly, you do want to have some conversations and understand how connected are they to different micro venture capital firms and other venture capital firms. Because VCs find companies through primarily networking
Oh, for sure.
and through contacts. So if you get stuck in an incubator that cannot bring you to that level and you have a really good idea, it can actually be to your detriment.
Oh yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah. So again, you've done the rodeo. You know what I'm talking about here. So my only advice to first-time founders specifically is to make use of what incubator resources are available, but also make sure that you understand the gaps in any incubator have certain gaps in its value ecosystem, certain strengths and certain weaknesses. Make sure that you identify those and and look externally if you cannot find it internally, but don't limit yourself only to a certain incubator if it influences your own speed of development, or if you don't get the advice that you're really looking for, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no, I've worked with a lot of incubators over the years. There have been good ones, there have been bad ones, both private,
Mm-hmm.
both government run. The ones that I consider to be really good are the ones that I can go into and I can look around and I can see startups like mine there. And I can go
Yes,
and talk to the founders and ask them, like, has this helped you
yes.
on your journey? And they say yes. Those are the incubators that I like to be in. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
going to, it doesn't matter if it's private, doesn't matter if it's public incubators.
Yes.
Going in and you have like, oh man, there's lots of situations where you go in and you talk to the director, the person managing the space, and you ask them,
Mm-hmm.
hey, how are things going? Oh, everything's going great. And I'm like, oh, so you got like all kinds of, oh, we have all kinds of startups and stuff like that. Okay, because I
Yes,
looked around like nobody's here and it's like 2 o'clock on a
exactly.
Tuesday. And they go, oh,
Yes.
it's a just not a busy day. Just everybody's off doing
Yeah.
something, I guess. And I go, oh, okay. So like, are they like in residence? Like, are they physically here? Are they like on an
Yes,
online system? Like, what are you guys doing? So there's like a few.
exactly.
That's like one red flag. Another red flag is incubators that go to business every 3 years. That's another red flag.
Yep.
Because I've seen that more in surprisingly the food space with like food tech incubators. I've
Yes.
seen go out of
Yes.
business and then pop back into
Oh, yes.
business every three
It's
years.
a tough space. Yes. Agree.
Then I've seen like another red flag that I pick up on is typically incubators that are entirely run by VC groups, like a single VC or like a cohort of VCs run it.
That's a
And
smart one. That's a smart one. I
the
agree with that. Yep.
the red
Hmm.
flag there is this moment that you go in, they're like, hey, like we're not going to sign like any NDAs. Just to like, and they like front face that you didn't ask, like you
Mm,
never bothered to ask the question, like, hey, do you guys like,
mm.
could you mind signing an NDA with? They're just like front and like center with you, like we're not gonna sign any NDAs
Yep.
for you being here.
Yep.
But if you're here,
Wow.
there's a chance for you to get funded by us. Oh, okay. That's another red flag because usually,
Yep.
that's not right for me to say usually. I have heard many cases of intellectual property theft being developed in those spaces
Oh,
and then being stolen by VCs from the founders in those
yes.
spaces. So yeah, those are like some typical red flags. But again, like the good stuff I see is like when I can go there and see my people there and sit down and talk to them, and they're like, yeah, it's like not bad. I'm
My
not
people.
expecting them to be like, this is life changing. This is like completely changed.
Nope.
They're just like, yeah, it's
Well,
good to be here.
that'll also be a flag to me if somebody tells me that.
Yeah.
So, so Matthew, just to summarize, so before you even get to venture capital as a founder with your startup, your journey starts with an incubator. That's how most startup companies
Unless
get
you're a
funded.
filthy bootstrap, like me.
Yeah, well, yes, but that's where it starts. And that incubator is going to play a big role, or can play a big role in your success in terms of the next step of
Oh, for sure.
investment. Yeah, of
Like if
investment.
you want to ever move towards a situation where you can take on venture capital, not saying
Hmm.
that that's for all startups. I've come to the conclusion that not every startup wants venture capital. Not every startup should get venture capital.
And not every startup needs venture
Yeah, not every
capital.
startup
Agree.
needs it. Yeah. But if
Correct.
you are in that kind of mindset where, and we can keep talking about this, about like what would that situation be that you would want to take it? But
Hmm.
in the situation that you do want to take it, you're going to have to network. You're going to have to be able to go into these
Yes.
incubators. And the key thing that these incubators provide, from my point of view, is I know this sounds kind of maybe weird, but it's an arena. It's an arena that you can go into, that you get
Yeah.
examined, and it
Yes,
becomes
you
your
do.
proving grounds, not to the VCs, but to the people running the incubation space. And if they're good, they're going to be able to market you to VCs, and they're going to be able to market you to other institutions so that you get support from those institutions and VCs.
Exactly. So that's where your journey starts. It doesn't start with venture capital.
No,
And then, I mean, you and I looked at a specific example, an incubator in New York, and we looked at five specific startups, uh, you know, just to kind of, again, see certain case studies in action, and it illustrated what we've just discussed. Uh, it started with the incubator in New York. It got $100,000 safe note, simple agreement for future equity. We can talk about that another day, but it's a simplified form of investment.
it's a
Uh,
contract. Straight up.
e-
I
e-
love it. It's beautiful. It's the easiest way to take investment money.
exactly, and it's also the least expensive way of
Yep.
taking money. In terms of associated legal costs, etc., 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 etc. So this incubator in New York has a very clear mandate program, incubator model. This is what we do. We want you to give up your full-time job. You need to be fully committed. We will give you $100,000 to $150,000 safe note to get you that first step up in launching your startup. Secondly, that incubator are connected to a number of micro VCs, VC funds that knows each other. The second level that this specific startup went through was venture capital firm that that kind of takes them from a pre-seed, seed, first level of investment to the next level of startup development with a round of about, so the first round was 100,000 safe note. The second round was 1.5 million, which was joint between, again, the incubator and this venture capital fund. And then the third round that they did was nearly 3 million, and a third VC partner came on board. So again, this is just an example of how things can work and how it's designed to work. Now, again, and we're not going to get into the deep technical aspects of this today, but with every round as a founder, your ownership in your business is going to reduce. That's how the process works.
Yep.
Also, with each round, hopefully, cross fingers, it's not a down round, which means the valuation of your business increases. Which is why these venture capital, and this is the key thing about venture capital, they don't invest because they love you or they think it's a great idea or whatever. They invest because they want to have a, a 300, 400% return on their money in a relatively short period of time.
We want 1,000% return in five
Yes,
years. And the way it is described to me is I'm taking my 1,000% if I have to pull your heart out of your chest and eat it in front of you.
that kind of sums it up.
Yep.
They want their money back, full stop. So that's the business model. And again, there's VCs that place in different spaces. So as an example, one of them that you and I looked at as well, specifically SC Ops, scalable opportunities.
Yep.
They have a very specific mandate and funding strategy, investment strategy. So they will only invest in startups that has proven product market fit.
Ooh.
So exactly. So although they VC, they more a growth equity VC than a startup VC. So again, there's differences and nuances between where they play and what they want out of it and their model.
So to that, do I want to call people? Do I not want to? Ooh, it's so tempting. It's gave me a bunch to nibble on there with regards to growth equity.
Mm,
There's different programs, or that's not the right way of saying it. There's different rounds that have specific labels to them that venture
yes,
capitalists typically label themselves by:
correct.
pre-seed, seed, Series A,
B,
Series B, and
C,
so forth.
yeah.
To that, the way that this was described to me and the way that I think of it is that a pre-seed round to a founder is going to be your first round of investment.
Yep,
And it's so you get a full, like, you get a blank cap table. The only people on the cap table are the founders and whatever.
yep,
If you're doing, because typically startups like to do a commons pool, or a way of thinking of this is like a pool of equity that you reserve for your employees. And
that's the common share pool,
yeah,
yes.
and then the common pool, the way that you do it is like for your first handful of employees, because you're a startup, you don't have a lot of money. You're gonna
No, you
have
don't.
to pay them not a lot.
In
Yeah, you're gonna have to subsidize their income is the best way of saying it. If it is a
Yes,
subsidy,
and you promise them future
that's right.
returns. Exactly. Yep.
So the common pool play that I typically see is like a 20% common pool, and then you sit there and divvy
Ooh,
it up and say,
that's a pretty good one, by the way.
yeah, 20% common pool. That's going to get diluted over time, and that's
Hmm.
pretty clear. And then your first few employees, you're going to be giving out like 3.5 to 4%. Like your first employee that you hire on, you're going to be telling them like, hey, I'm going to pay you like nothing. I'm going to pay you like dirt
Correct.
wages because I just don't have the cash. So can I give you like $20,000 a year to work for me
And
part
free
time?
coffee.
Yeah, and I give
Yep.
you coffee and I give you pizza and I give
Yep.
you shares that are worth nothing, but someday maybe they're worth something.
But Matthew, I want to interrupt you there. When you were a first-time founder, how much of this did you know?
I didn't know any. I didn't know any of it, and the way that I found out about it is just by hearing other people talk about it, and then ask questions
Hmm.
about like, oh, like So what does that mean? And then just asking the questions around like, how do you handle compensation? How do you handle keeping people motivated? How do you handle finding the right employee? Like
Hmm.
it's a typical team problem. I'm guilty of this with all of my startups. Is that you have a team of people. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
just guy, and if you have a team of people, you're going to have holes where you have to be able to do certain jobs, and these people just don't
Absolutely.
have competency in those jobs. And that's not to be mean,
Hmm.
it's just like that is the result of the situation. You're going to have a
Correct.
team of people, and like, I mean, like my last startup was Food Bite, and we had a team of people that were a bunch of computer scientists. So like when you're in that situation where you get a bunch of computer scientists, you're struggling on marketing, you're struggling on sales,
Yes.
struggling on product
Yes, you
market
do.
fit. You need somebody to do this. Like somebody has to grab the reins and actually take responsibility for the situation. So who's going to be?
Hmm.
And it's like,
Hmm.
if I don't have anybody on the team, then cool. Well, I need to find somebody, right? So in that
Yes, you
situation,
do.
you have to go and like actually find these people. And the only way you're going to be able to find them, first off, is, I mean, LinkedIn can help, but you have to also be able to have a meeting with them and say, hey, do you want to do this thing? And they're going to go, yeah, that sounds fun. How much do you pay? And I go, not much. So
Exactly.
can I give you a sheet of paper that says I'm going to give you a little bit of
Uh,
equity every
uh,
year so long as you work here?
I've seen those.
Yeah, and that's going to be in the form of options. So I'm not going to give you
Yeah, I've
equity,
seen those as well. Yes.
because that's the other key thing that I learned from Toronto is you probably don't want to give equity carte blanche, because then it grows legs and can just walk away. You want to give
Yes,
people
it does.
options and then have a vesting round so that they can vest into the company. Because again, like even if you're saying, oh well, like that's mean, they have to buy their own way into the company. Well, there's a strike price. So like that's the point, is they get it at a huge discount.
Correct.
So
Correct.
and that's
Correct.
going to 10x, like, or at least you should hope that it 10x is every round over round. So that's going to be able to
Correct.
pay. Like there's still people out there that have like uncashed in Facebook options from like their founding team, and Gmail like
Hmm.
from their founding team, that
Hmm.
are like, hey, I paid $200 for this, and this piece of paper is worth like actual millions of dollars.
Yes, it is.
And
The few lucky ones.
yeah, and that's what I
Absolutely.
mean. Is like
Yeah.
there are these people out there that exist with it, and like that is an asset. Like you can go and you can leverage that to take a
Oh,
loan. You can go and leverage that to take.
so, so Matthew, so just to support what
I'm on
you
a
said.
tangent. Yeah.
No. No. Just to support what you said. So, and it's going to be just a visual description. So normally when you uh, look at startups that's in an incubator or an incubator program, it's normally two people smiling. A founder and a co-founder. Okay, when you start looking at 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 somebody like SE Ops, venture capital, they say you got to do $500,000 a year before we're interested. And guess what? They have photos of the teams, founding teams of their companies, and there's at least between 8 and 14 people part of the founding team. So again, just that already tells you everything that you need to know in terms of the different levels of startup development. I mean, I remember when you and I met for the first time, I think there were three of you
Yeah.
as part of FoodBite, and eventually it started growing and growing into a larger team. Now, you've also mentioned, where it's essential to build a team to grow your business. Otherwise, how do you grow your business? You don't have the money to pay people. Now, again, you, me, other folks, there's various opportunities we have where we can support startups. What, again, promised equity or promised share options or whatever. Um, However, there's very few of them that really attractive.
Mm.
So again, your ability to attract the right kind of people to your startup is also going to be driven largely by the incubator that you started with, the network that you started building up, the kind of connections you are beginning to make. And the better you are at that, the more successful you will be at building a team. Very simple. Some of these VCs, again, like SE Ops, they want a board seat. But even in the early stages, you know, those connections can be worth its weight in gold in finding the right kind of team members and every team member counts in a startup.
Oh yeah.
They all add to the overall um, momentum of the startup and to how investors look at the startup.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you, so it's funny, and the reason why I laughed earlier when you said two people smiling is like I'm like, yeah, that very much is the status quo. The only problem is when you go in and there's like four engineers and they're smiling at each other and they're smiling at you saying everything is great. And I go, oh, everything's
It's
great. So you guys are making money? No. Do you guys have like a newsletter? Like where you at with like, or it's the like marketing, the position, and they're like, oh, we don't do any marketing whatsoever. So you don't have any
mm,
sales, you don't have any marketing. Yeah. So why
yeah,
is everything great? Why you all smiling? They're like,
yep.
because we're very nervous. Or it's even worse is you go
Well,
in and you find like this is like super awkward. You go and you find two MBAs and they're like on the hook for like 1.5 million in sales. And they're like, we actually haven't built the product yet. Do you know anybody that can like build the product?
oh boy, oh boy.
The other
So,
direction, right?
well, yes, and I think Matthew, that's actually, and you kind of described it with laughter and a smile, but I think it supports a very important message: is that every startup have a different set of challenges. They're not the same. Uh, and again, that first part of your journey, the incubator, the kind of people that you're going to meet as part of the incubator, the kind of venture capital fund they know, people in that space that you know, the better that ecosystem is, the easier it'll be for you to solve your unique challenges that comes with having a startup. Some folks I know are incredibly comfortable at employing people. Other people that I know, it's the most stressful thing ever for them to employ people. Uh, you know, some founders are incredibly comfortable knocking on doors. Uh, you know, the whole customer discovery process. Other folks, you virtually need to either force or bribe to start doing that because it is so counter to who they are and what they are, and this is where team members come in, etc., etc., etc. So the dynamic is different each startup.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I seen startup founders who it's interesting you say like you got to bribe or like coerce them to go and talk to people. Like I've seen engineering startup founders in that kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like talking to companies. I love engaging and like fun, and hearing from people their stories, and I love talking to them
Mm-hmm.
about like how my product could help them. Okay, how many companies have you talked to this week? I haven't talked to any. How
Yes,
many companies have you talked to in like the last month? I haven't talked to any.
yes.
Well, why? And they're like, well, I don't know how to get a hold of them. Well, do you like call them? Like, do you like look up their phone
Yes,
number and call them? I said, yeah, I called them,
yep,
but like a secretary said that she didn't want to
yeah,
like talk to us, and then
yes,
I left my information. They never get back to me. Oh,
yep,
okay. So what you're doing is what's known as cold outreach, and
yes.
99% of the time you're going to hit a brick wall.
Of course you are.
That's cold outreach. So you have to ask yourself if I'm doing cold outreach, and that's your strategy, trying to build relationships, trying to build connections with people that have never met you before,
Mm-hmm.
and the entire relationship is hinged off a single 2 sentence value proposition over a
Mm-hmm.
phone call or an email. You need to do that in a scalable way, and you need to have a list of like 1 million people you're going to reach out to get your first like 100 customers, just because that's what it's going to convert to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to that point, like most startup engineering founders don't think of like the numbers game that way. And I say, if you don't want to play the numbers game, there are other strategies. You can do networks. So you can go and sit there and say, who could I potentially sell my product to? Like who do I think would be interested? And then try to go to those events that those kind of companies are at, and then pitch to
Mm-hmm.
them there and say like, hey, like I'm so and so, like good to meet you. Like do you do like these kind of things? And like you're going to be dealing with the owners of the companies expectantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can just be in front of them and talk about like what you're working on and get feedback from them. And if they're interested, then they'll say like, hey, you should reach out to me at this time or like at this phone number or
Absolutely.
like whatever. and then they'll give you their personal contact information. That's like another way of doing it. It's not so much,
Mhm.
it is like the trade show idea, but most people think of like going to trade shows to go and like see the panels and like see the different discussions and stuff. And it's like, no, you're on a safari. You're like actually hunting people. Like you're creating a
Yes,
list and you're
yes,
going there
yes,
and you're
yes,
actually like
yes. That
trying to find
that's
these
exact.
people and hunt them.
Yep, yep. Again, agree. And Matthew, again, you've mentioned flags. You know, when it comes to incubators and kind of how it supports a startup. I want to add to that, just based on what you've just mentioned now as well, especially when you say it's a numbers game. So for me, a flag when it comes to an incubator is that if there's too much focus on the process and too little focus on getting your first paying customers. So, what do I mean by that? Some incubators can focus a lot on customer discovery, product market fit, and they get very passionate about that process. And they are less passionate about actually getting you to a point where you get people to pay for your product or your service. So, again, when it comes to working in an incubator or making sure that you're being challenged at the right level, there's got to be a focus from day one in when and how am I going to get to my first paying customers. Otherwise, it's just a startup process that can muddle on for too long.
So
And that is a flag for any venture capital fund. So as an example, if sorry Matthew, I interrupted you there, but as an
I
example, if
interrupted you.
you've been in startup stealth mode for 3 years, yeah, good luck at selling your whatever you do to a venture capital fund. Just good luck. If you in startup stealth mode for 6 months or 7 months or even a year, and you can say, I've got my first paying customer, or I've got, a proven interest appetite, willingness to buy, pay for what I have, you're going to get interest. It's as simple as that.
I think that startups, I hate, oh, this is like a pet peeve of mine. I really, I shouldn't use the word hate. It fills me with
It is.
anger when I
Yes.
hear startup founders say I'm in stealth mode.
That's why I
Also,
used the word.
yeah, also, I can't seem to get any sales. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, well, why are you doing this? Like, what's the, like if I had a like just take a moment and think about this. What if I
Yes.
went out and spent money and I got a store and I didn't have the name of the store up. I didn't tell anybody it's a store. There was no sign saying open or anything
Mm.
like that. And people walk by and I'm standing there at the cash register, but it doesn't look like a cash register. I'm just awkwardly standing behind a
Hmm.
table looking at people as they walk by and looking through the glass and look at me and I smile and wave at them and they go and they like smile and wave back at me and walk
Hmm.
by. And I'm sitting there looking at myself in the mirror every time I wake up in the morning going, man, like, why aren't people coming into my store and buying? Maybe because they don't know
Exactly.
your store. So, like,
Yes.
it's the problem that I have is a lot of these founders don't take a moment and think, like, well, what am I trying to create? And the problem I have behind this, to be clear, is not that the founders are thinking about how do I market the product? Because I think that that's the
Hmm.
fundamental wrong approach. I know that's going to sound like
Yes.
really contrived, but I am becoming more and more a believer that tech founders, are actually secretly, and as cringe as it sounds, is social media influencers, or like a form of influencer, because we have a different idea
Uh,
of how to
yep.
approach a problem, and that process
Yep.
is what we're selling. But it's us. We are the people that created this new process, and it could be something stupid. Like I've seen all kinds of SaaS ideas out there that people come up with. There's a dude out there that was selling laundry money on a subscription. So you give him money and he sells you laundry coins that you can go to a laundromat and put laundry coins in, and it's just a subscription just to make sure you get your laundry money on like this. It's madness, like at the level of like these business models, but it's a different approach, and that's the important thing, is that people are coming up with different ideas of how to do things. Say, I'd sign up for it. Okay, well, do other people sign up for it? Do other people think this is a good idea, or is it just stupid, or is it just dumb and nobody cares? But like this idea that you're putting it in stealth mode when you, the founder or the person coming up with the idea, you need to build an audience. You need to be able to
Correct.
do the Jeff Bezos, like tell them why, show them how. That
Yes.
kind of mentality, and you're in a stealth mode and you're not actually doing that, you're just hurting yourself. And I don't understand that. Like the big thing for me with FoodBite was going out, like having a newsletter where I got
Mm,
food safety people to say like, hey, this is the kind of food safety I'm interested in. Oh, cool,
mm,
thanks. And then I just take the data, push it through a Google form, and then I put it back to them saying, hey, this is what everybody thinks about food safety based off these levels and commodity types and stuff like that. How do you guys feel about that? And then people write into me and they go, you're an idiot. You don't have no idea what you're talking about. These people are
mm.
morons. And other people are like, oh, that's really interesting. That's really, could you talk about this next week? So like you're building a community and people have different
Yes.
ideas. And like that's the reality of the situation.
Well, we can pull that straight through in terms of what the venture capitalists are looking for as well. And of course, they want an idea, innovative idea, disruptive idea that's scalable, yada, 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 all of that. Anybody can read that up. But what they're also looking for is credibility, uh, you know, uh, and what a lot of founders don't understand is that they stand in front of VCs or they talk to VCs, and it's because it's them and they know themselves. They expect the VC to believe them because they are who they are. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I can be trusted. You can trust me. They don't say that, but it's implied. Um, VCs don't care about that.
No.
Uh, you know, and again, something simple, and it's part of the incubation level one of your venture capital approach. Um, and you and I spoke about it the other day as well, is that, as an example, if there are communities of domain specific communities that really knows a specific subject, for a startup founder, to get recognized by that kind of community, micro community, whatever it is worth its weight in gold to any venture capital firm. So, as an example, with FoodBite, uh, and I'm going to actually ask you the question with FoodBite, when did you feel that you're beginning to get to that credibility level where VCs are looking at you and, okay, this is not just Matthew and his team, this is industry, there's buy-in, and this is scalable. When did you kind of get that vibe?
That vibe,
Difficult question,
yeah,
I know.
that vibe was clear as day to me the moment that I was able to show VCs that not only like I'm selling food bite in the form of subscriptions to
Yes,
companies that are looking for food safety programs. So that is
yes,
like my main clients that I'm going after. But now we've been able to prove out the model enough that we have food safety firms coming to us, and the food safety firms are asking
exactly,
to acquire our technology in a licensing agreement so that they can solve that problem
exactly.
for their clients who will also become FoodBite customers because they'll be buying a subscription at the end of it. They just really liked our
Correct.
tool because our tool made developing and validating food safety plans faster and easier for them. So they saved ultimately time. And as much as you sit there and go, oh, with all that time saved, they must be able to pay themselves more money. No. With all that time saved, they must be able to acquire more customers. No. With all that time saved, it's like they literally just spent their time at home on a beach doing other things just because they had free time. And
Mm,
that is, it's like a lot of these food safety. Oh, it's not even like food safety. This is like maybe just a bit of a biased opinion. You can like if anybody
mm,
feels like in the comments they want to tell me to f off, that's fine. There's a lot of agency firms out there that are not actually monitoring their own like intake, their own funnel,
yep,
and figuring out ways to improve upon it. They just have a funnel set up word of mouth, and people
yep,
come to them and they're saying like, oh,
yes.
like with all this extra time I could reinvest in developing my funnel. You look at the agency and explain that to them like, hey, maybe you could do that. They're like, I have no idea what a funnel is. And like that's the like especially with like food safety people, they are individuals who have like engineering,
Yes, they are.
biology chemistry
They're
backgrounds,
not, yep, they're not
so they're
salespeople.
not innately familiar with this concept, right? So like
Yes,
the moment that I could sit there and say like, hey, we can do that so we can develop our own funnel, we can also do that to acquire funnels of other people, and essentially they
yes,
become food by customers. We have a process for
correct.
both. And this is now like before, here's the growth curve. Now here's our growth curve showing how we acquire customers from other firms as well, and
Hmm.
at the same time be able to assist those firms because the monitoring reports we generate, those firms consume and get value out of that as well. Then VCs go, oh, okay, like this is something meaningful now.
Now, 100%. Now bring that back to again SEOps, where they say they invest in company startups that solve specific domain specific problems.
Yeah.
You've just defined a domain specific problem. And you've just defined the fact that when you started getting industry domain specific credibility buy in, that's when in your investment conversations also changed. So again, I think Matthew, when it comes to, and it's going to sound so simple, but again, people need to hear, founders need to hear this, is that when it comes to venture capital, uh, the more you understand the process before the time, the better. Uh, the earlier you can get involved with an ecosystem that will allow you to access a VC network, the better. Um, the third thing is, even if you're unsure about your idea or concept, rather look for those moments of truth instead of just dragging it out and thinking that you need to do more or whatever. So for me, my message to founders when it comes to venture capital is first and foremost, don't get too excited. It's a tool to use to grow your startup. They're going to take their pound of flesh, if not more. Uh, don't think too far ahead. Start by getting the foundational components of your startup in place. Uh, the first paying customers. Build on that. The VCs will find you if you really solve a problem
If you're
that is
really good,
attractive.
then
Yeah,
you're going to
they
have to
will
beat them
find you.
away with a baseball bat.
Absolutely, they will find you. Another good indication, and you know that as well as I do, is they will come knocking, and you can tell not from their response because all of them will tell you afterwards, "Thank you, this was very interesting." Yada 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 yada.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but how many of them actually come back to you? That will also give you a very good indication of how solid is your progress to date, your idea, your product. All of those things are indications in terms of where your startup can go to.
I would say like this is like a personal take is I try to when I've talked with VCs, the very first thing I want to do is disqualify them
Yes,
because they're not a real VC. I think I've talked about this previously on the podcast. There are fake VCs out there. This sounds really mean. It sounds kind of nasty, but
Matthew, there's
yeah,
fake everything nowadays.
the
Why wouldn't there be fake VCs?
there are absolutely fake VCs in this world that will tell you that they're an investor and that they love you and they love your idea and what you're working on is so amazing. And you go, oh, okay, so like you're an actual VC that like cuts checks. Oh, absolutely. How many companies are you invested in? Oh,
Absolutely.
I haven't. In this would be my first investment. Oh, okay. How long have you been doing this? Like, how long have you been around? Oh, I've been around for like 7 years.
Yep, just
So,
about everything. Exactly.
hmm,
A complete waste of time. Now, the other thing as well, and I want to bring it up because you always laugh at me because I don't normally get animated, but about this I get very, very animated. It's about founders not knowing their numbers, you know, and VCs is 100% a numbers game.
oh,
It's strategy and numbers. That's it.
they're going to be looking
Um,
at average customer lifetime value is like the very first thing they want to
100%.
see because they want to
Yes,
see not only is it important that they understand number good, like to give me a number that I like, they also want to be able to see that you can demonstrate the ability that you've turned this into an algorithm, into a process, and you can point at it and you can put truth to power and say it is this and this is how I calculate this with
exactly.
efficacy. And the
Exactly.
other one is typically they want to see maybe things have changed, but like no, like 5 years ago, a big number that a lot of VCs wanted to see is the 7x immediate return.
Hmm.
So if you have a marketing sales funnel,
Yep.
the big number that they want to be able to see is like what's the cost to acquire a customer, and then if
Exactly.
you take like the average revenue per new customer,
Hmm.
divide that by cost of acquiring customer, they want to see a 7x immediate return. Before it could be like 10 years ago. I know this sounds really extreme, but like 10 years ago, it was you can have like 18 months to get back that investment to acquire the customer. Like we as the VCs will put
Uh-huh.
in the money to
Hmm.
enable that funnel to happen. Now VCs, like especially early stage ones, are so hyper vicious that they're like, we need to be able to see a 7x return on the actual like acquisition of the customer immediately because there's so much hedged risk into this bet that we're taking with you.
So, Matthew, you actually described it incredibly well, but you've gone into too much
Oh no.
depth that I
Oh
that
no.
I even
Ooh.
that I
Ooh.
even want from founders. What I want to know from founders is first and foremost that they recognize that they need to understand their numbers, that they have thought about their revenue model, that they have thought about how customers is going to be acquired, that they have thought about how much this is going to cost them, etc., etc., etc. You will be amazed at how few founders actually do that.
Oh yeah, because none of them. And to the challenge that I have, the very first Lego block that goes, or the very first Jenga block that
Hmm.
goes into this tower, that people fail to articulate in the go-to-market strategy is top of
Hmm.
funnel. Top of funnel
Hmm.
is actually the most important. Like a lot of people say, like, oh, like I got a 80% conversion out of my deals. Who the F cares? I literally could not give if 80, 85, 90,
Yes,
2%. I don't care. If you're not doing top of funnel to create engagement, you're just going to starve. It is
exactly.
what it is.
It
And
is what it is.
the funny thing about this, a lot of people talk about like their deal rate, and they haven't even like they've made like less than 100K, and they're talking about like what's the execution on the deal rate. I literally couldn't care because
Yes,
at the end of the day, you don't even know who your customer is yet, right? Like you're less than 100K. You could be selling
yes.
like I've seen founders. Oh God, like I've seen founders that like have a really amazing idea
Yeah.
and they're selling their idea to like a B2C commercial into the like, a general audience, and I'm going like that is like so hyper specific for like a specific like where'd you even get this idea, and then they work for the industry that I'm thinking about, and I'm like why not sell it to that industry, and they're like
Mm.
oh well like I have some connections but I don't know if I should be leveraging them, and my incubator said I should be like building like a B2C funnel first to
Uh-huh.
understand. Dude, just like so like this is my take on it is like try to do top of funnel first to understand like
Mhm.
who your actual audience is, and then you as a
Absolutely.
founder, how you, maybe it's mean to point, as you as a founder, how can you handle creating conversations and managing those conversations at top of funnel? Because
Hmm.
as you go from top of funnel, like generating
Yep.
leads, to down to okay, I have leads, and
Hmm.
what does it take to keep them here? That is a separate problem. And then once when they're leads that are kept there and they're entertained, they're interested, they're excited about what you're working on, they have vested value in you succeeding, then the next one is like, okay, what's it going to take to get them to pay for the thing? Those are like the three problems, right? And if you're
So
not putting
what
that
you've
first,
just so what you've just described, Matthew, also kind of summarizes the startup funding process, investment process.
oh yeah,
Concept, customer discovery, validation, product market fit, and there's venture capital money designed to help you through each of those phases. And you've just described it in real terms, in terms of um, how it actually happens. So again, it goes back to what I've said. There's a focus on the, unless there's a very deliberate focus in the incubator of driving you towards first paying customers within a specific period of time, put a question mark behind the value that that incubator can or is designed to provide you, and that determines your own approach and who else do you need to talk to besides the incubator. But if it doesn't have that language where it wants to see revenues after a specific period of time from customers, you're probably going to get stuck uh, in a process that might move, or more than likely is going to move too slow. And your sell to VCs is going to become a lot tougher.
So that's a good way of putting it. And
I'm
I've
trying
seen,
to diplomatic here.
yeah, no, I like that approach because I've seen two problems with startups. I mentioned one of them.
Mm.
The one that I mentioned was top of funnel. So the top of
Yes,
funnel where you're not driving excitement, you're not driving any interest. People don't even know who you are. You're in like full
correct.
stealth mode, even though you got like something that's gonna change the world forever. No, like the only people that know about you is like your mom and
Yes,
dad. It's like who cares, right?
yes,
The other problem that I've seen is people that do like super top of funnel, but then they don't actually sit there and build like any kind of way to collect
yes,
money. I saw a
yes.
startup that was in an incubator with me, and it was like over 500,000 users, and it was like an education platform. And I thought like, oh my god, like they must be taken off. Like even if,
Mm.
and I said to myself, because I was actually arguing this with my co-founder, I'm like, can you like they must be like smoking us in sales revenue right now? Because like just imagine if they're charging like $1 a month,
Mm.
like just 99 cents a month for each of their users. Well, they weren't charging anything; they were just giving it away for free. And
Mm.
then you go, oh, well, isn't that like a huge development cost? It's not just a huge development cost, it's a huge hosting cost. You're hosting half
Oh,
a million people in education. So you have like videos, books, and
uh-huh.
stuff like, and you're hosting all of that for 500,000 people. So
Mm-hmm.
like their debt is like out to the roof. And then they're trying to figure they're in our incubator and they left our incubator because, and then eventually went out of business. I talked to the co founder and he was like, he said to me, like, I couldn't even get people to give me like $5 a month. And he was like, what is it going to take? Like
Why?
$2 a month. Just because like he was just like, hey, like and the way that he would announce it is it wouldn't be in a newsletter because he never did a newsletter to gauge feedback. So he'd just be like, he just like had this thing in the product where he's like, hey, like we're gonna do like, and again, like this is just the foolishness of founders. He would just tell people like we're gonna build it into the product. We're gonna be very clear, like we're coming up with pricing. Uh, Free model is that basically you get like one module, and then the premium model that you have to pay for $5 a month is you get access to everything. And then people
Mm.
just went like, cool, like I'm not giving you any money.
Just like that.
Yep.
Yeah, look, Matthew, it goes back to what I just described earlier, understanding numbers.
Yep.
You know, it, and for me, not for me, both you and I know, is, and as I said earlier, venture capitalists, VCs are only in this to make money.
Yep.
Uh, unless you have some idea how you plan to make money, why would they give you money to to do
They're
that?
just philanthropists, clearly.
Yeah, exactly the opposite. So I really like the way you described it because, and I've seen examples like that as well. You know where, and there's different reasons for it. I don't want to go into that. But again, the bottom line is a VC wants to see a clear path to revenues, profitability, not always, depending at what stage you are at. But they do want to see a clear path to revenues, customer acquisitions, what we talked about earlier, product market fit, uh, and an ability to scale rapidly. Profitability, they know, will come later. But unless you can do the top of funnel, and by the way, when you started FoodBite, you had to learn top of funnel,
I
didn't
didn't
you?
even know what that meant.
Exactly. And you
Computer
not,
scientist. Yeah.
yes, and you're not a natural top of funnel person, but you learned to become one.
Yeah. Because everything starts with conversations.
Well, you and I had that conversation a few years ago where you were talking about, if I remember correctly, Van, I need a salesperson. And my comment was, well, Matthew, first start by selling your product yourself. You remember that
Yeah, I do.
conversation?
It was the first time we met.
Yes, it was. Oh boy. And I'm glad you didn't show me the door, by the way. But it was like, for me, the first thing that I look at is I don't want to see an ability of the founder to sell. I want to see a willingness of the founder to sell. Being able to do it very well is the second priority. But just being willing to do it and understand the responsibility to do it, that's what I would look at as any VC.
Yeah, like I need to see that the founder, like a lot of people say, he's gotta have skin in the game. They gotta have skin in the game, and it's like I just want to see somebody that is desperate. I want to see somebody that understands like
That's
they're
a
yeah
yep,
they're in a
yep,
vehicle and they're driving and there's like a
yes,
danger cliff and they hit the gas even harder and they're now going off the side of the cliff and they're going maybe I should like get the
yes,
parachute out back. I don't know. Like, do I just
yes,
hit the
yes,
ground?
yes, yes.
So like, I need to have them have that moment because nothing's worse than like talking to a founder that is like completely burned out. They've been doing it for like 5 years, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about like maybe doing like some social media posts or like letting people know about like what
Oh,
I'm working
please
on."
not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so like that
no.
kind of mentality is kind of is it's you're already cooked at that point. Like you should have been
Mm,
working on, especially because the key thing I'd like to point out to people is our ideas don't last forever. We are in a
no,
competitive
they don't.
space. Like I get a startup, I'm competing with startups in like Uzbekistan and Nigeria and like from all over the world now. Everybody has a
Mm,
laptop. Everybody has, well, I
yes,
say
they
that, but
do.
there's like over half of our population of the earth, like over 4 billion people have access to a computer and the internet. So like anybody theoretically can go and just
Mm,
like go on Google and be like, how to make sales online and then start figuring out how to do that. So to that, our ideas don't last forever. If you're not creating it and you're not marketing it and selling it, somebody else is going to do it. Somebody else has the same ideas are inside your head right now, and they're probably working on them right now as you're working on whatever you're doing as you're listening to this
correct,
podcast.
correct,
Hopefully
correct,
not on
correct.
your second monitor. So yeah, so to that, like
S-
founders have to understand, like we need as much as people say that term skin in the game, and also people say product market fit. Every time you say that, like I just wince a little like that because it's
mm,
for founders. Product market fit is the easiest thing to understand, yet at the same time, nobody understands what it is. Like if you sit there and ask like a libertarian, like, what do you think about limited
yes.
government? They all seem to have the same concept, and then you could say,
Mm,
cool, could you define that for me, please? And then
hmm
all of them just like, then they just like kind of glitch out and struggle at defining exactly
Yes.
what that is. So it's in my mind, like, what in your mind, if founders need to focus on that, do you think that and by focusing on building that top of funnel, building the funnel in general,
Mm.
where does product market fit even fit in? What do you consider product market fit, Werner? Because I have my idea, but I want to hear from you.
Okay, so I've got a number of opinions about product market fit. Uh, there are folks that believes in the process and that is passionate about the process, about product market fit, and what they see product market fit is where you have a product that fits a specific market need or solves a specific problem that people is willing to pay for. So very simple definition, and there's people that believe passionately in that process. And although they know it's an iterative process, too many people still see that as a linear process, and they see once product market fit is achieved, they see that as an end destination. In other words, I have a product, I have a market, I have people that buys it. That's not product market fit for me. Product market fit for me is an ability to think, uh, design, um, continuously develop, engage uh, with customers, not just creating product market fit, but developing product market fit. You know, there's an old saying. I don't know even if it's true or not, but it's a very well-known saying. Is that Henry Ford, when he started making the Model T Ford, it was all black.
Mm-hmm.
And he always believed that, you know, people aren't interested in different colors. He also believed that if he went out to ask people if they wanted a car, they would probably say they would want a faster horse carriage. So it just supports the view that product market fit for me is first and foremost a continuous development, learning, engagement process. It's not a destination. It's a process and it's a mindset.
Yep.
It starts with your first product success, where people start buying it, but that's only the beginning of product market fit. So for me, the biggest difference between what I see in the industry is I see too many people see that as, and not too many people, I can't say that, but there is a belief that it's a process, that it can be managed. For me, it's a ongoing engagement and ability to learn, adjust, and develop. So what I want to see in a startup is and this is going to sound very vanilla, but I actually want to see a startup that has developed the capability to listen and understand and ask. You know, you and I are always about why, why. And for me, product market fit never ever stops. Uh, you know, I love, personally, I love putting solutions in front of customers that help them solve a problem. And that's always what I tell founders is that please stop selling, just start solving problems. Because if you're going to start selling to me, you're going to lose me. But if you come to me with an approach of I can help you solve a problem, you have my attention.
Mm.
And secondly, how can you solve this problem, and what other opportunities comes out of this? So that's how I see product market fit. I don't believe it needs to be on a pedestal. I don't believe I don't just, there's some people that better at it than others, but I 100% believe that it's a skill that can be learned and that can be developed.
I think so too. I think so too. The way that I do this with other founders um, is that there's two components to this. There's the
Hmm.
execution component, so actually going out and
Correct.
doing it, and
Hmm.
then there's a continuous improvement, continuous learning model. That is the second
Exactly.
piece of it.
That's
This is
exactly
similar
it.
to and that's kind of like the point of Black Campbell. What it's trying to do is help
Hmm.
companies meet a product market fit.
Correct.
Even you can have established companies out there that have never been able
Hmm.
to prove product market fit to me, because the first part and the way that I do this with founders, I go, so like I just ask them like, hey, how are sales going? And they're going, oh, like things are great. I think I've achieved product market fit. Oh, okay. So like, how many companies have you sold to? Oh,
Exactly.
I've sold to five. Oh, you got
Yes.
five customers? And like, what do you sell to? I sell to like medical insurance firms. Okay, so there's
Hmm.
only five medical insurance firms because that's the market, right? And they go,
Yes.
well, no, there's like thousands of them. Oh, okay. So you've sold the five, but you're executing on the rest of them, and all of them are captured inside of your funnel. So you have like all of them, or like I would say like a statistical average of them inside of your funnel, so that you can sit there and say
Correct.
like, okay, I understand what the model is and I understand how they function and how they work, and I have enough of them in my funnel that I have confidence that this is what the market behaves as. And they're like, no. I go, okay, so why do you think you have product market fit? Well, I've sold to five people. Okay, to that,
Yep.
like, whereas so if you've sold to five, what are you learning out of the five that you've sold to, and how are you using that information, that analytics that you've been able to glean, to sell to the rest of them, so you can get an actual market capture? Because 5% would be incredible. Five is not 5%. Five is just five. So like, how do you grow over time, or how do you, because everything that we're doing as founders is hedged on growth. If we're not doing growth, then there's no point to even talk to venture capital, right? If we're not doing like an
Correct.
equity growth model. So
Correct. Correct. Well,
where's the
look,
growth?
Matthew, that's the kind of language that venture capitalists look for. Now, for me, and you're going to laugh, but for me, product market fit is a foundational deliverable for any startup. I just have a thing about people, uh, what's the right word? Uh, Elevating it to above what it really is. Uh, and it goes a little bit back to what you said. Founders also needs to be influencers.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Do not believe what you read from influencer product market people. Sorry.
It's all fake news. It's
Yeah,
all.
well, it's there to create engagement and content. It's not there to do anything else.
Yeah, no, I
So,
gotcha.
so for me, the first thing that I want to see is I want to see a recognition that how tough product market fit is. And I want to hear the kind of language that you've just expressed, that okay, so we've done this, but this is only kind of a very small part of what product market fit is and mean for our startup. And we're not sure about this yet. We're not sure about that yet, but this is what we think it is, and this is where we're going. So, venture capitalist wants to see a commitment to the process and an understanding of the process. Uh, and depending on where they invest in your startup journey, they want to see uh, already some results. But otherwise, what they're looking for is they're looking for a certain level of understanding, insight, in terms of how tough this process is and how willing are you as a founder to actually learn, adjust, pivot instead of just trying to sell your solution, your product to a market that says, nah, not really what we want, or yeah, maybe, that's not it.
It's like a market changes over time, right? Like the thing that I learned about Food Bite was, oh, people want food safety. But then like,
Yeah.
oh, people want digital food safety because digital is better. Well, there's a lot of people out there like paper and pencil. It is what it is. So like then they want to stick to their guns. But there is a market change where more people are wanting to adopt digital technologies because they can see value
Yes.
add improvements that you can bring to the
Sure.
table. Same with like Black Anvil and digital marketing. Like I was able
Yep.
to show with my first customer, they were doing like radio ads and paper ads.
Hmm.
And then they switched to digital and they
I
went,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like they were spending tens of thousands of dollars a year in radio and paper. And I was
Hmm.
asking them point blank, like, what are you getting at a return for that investment? I have no idea.
Hmm.
If you have no idea, why are you putting money into it? Well,
Yes.
you gotta spend money on marketing. Okay, well, why not spend
Exactly.
money on digital? Because if you spend money on digital, we can at least measure what the return is.
Ideally.
Yeah. So like if there's a process that I can sit out there and like craft a funnel for you where I say you put this much money into these ads, hook them, bring them into an ecosystem that we define,
Hmm.
and then see how people purchase out of that ecosystem, then we can like measure an actual ROI. And so that was the
Hmm.
fundamental conception behind Black Anvil. And I
Hmm.
mean, I've been able to demonstrate it so far, and to the point is to be the influencer, as weird of a term it is to use for myself as a computer scientist. If I can show you that I can do something better for you and you kind of get into that idea, you
Yes.
start doing it yourself. I am influencing you, but you're also influencing yourself at that point. And especially when you can show like a positive return, then all of a sudden your behavior changes. And then I fulfilled my goal, which is,
Oh,
and then
behavior
do that.
change. Yes.
Well, I mean, like,
Yes.
one of
No,
the,
I agree, but it's just a very powerful word
yeah, well,
because that's exactly what it is.
if you look at as strange as it sounds, like some of the best influencers out there, in my opinion, are people that do like self help books and
Yep.
people that do like personal fitness, like
Yep.
coaching and stuff like that, because these people understand the reason why they're coming to me and asking for self help or personal fitness is because they've got themselves in a situation where they're not happy with their life, they're not happy with how they
Hmm.
look, they're not happy with themselves.
Hmm.
They want change, but they don't know how. So I'm here
Yes.
to help them bridge that gap. And I have to influence them to teach them like there's no golden, there's no like silver bullet, there's no golden solution that just works carte blanche for everybody. You have to look internally to yourself and figure out what the problem is, and then I can help you do that. But it's kind of like a therapy of sorts where I have to get you to understand who you are and what this problem actually means internally to yourself, and then help you fix that. And then you see the positive change, and then you go on this journey. And at the end of it, we'll see if that results in a positive.
So guess what you've just done? You've just summarized a very large part of the complexity of product market fit.
Did I? I just thought it was
Yes.
measuring a number on a graph, but okay.
No, that's what you did. And too few founders understand that.
Oh, okay.
And that is why the folks that's really good with it, they're not just engineers, but they have an ability to understand and we also need to conclude, but they have an ability, Matthew, to understand, to connect, to perceive, to sense people behavior, uh, mindset, uh, emotions, uh, addressing the unstated needs, the unstated fears. That's what makes good product market fit, is that it's not all in front of you. There's a lot of between the line messages, subconscious messaging, connections. And that is, for me, uh, what makes product market fit very interesting, very challenging, but also where most people miss the boat. That's my opinion and my experience.
Yeah, I agree as well. Like it's
Yeah,
the way that it was described to me is like there has to be a test, and each VC has like a different test of what they do, or
correct.
like a slight variation of it. The VCs that I know like test, and they'll never like show you the cards. They'll never be able to say like, here's the secret sauce. They like to keep those cards nice and close to their chest. But the way that I was able to determine it with some of the VCs that came on board with us was, could you demonstrate to me that you have like a social media marketing funnel or like some kind of marketing funnel that you're executing
Mm,
on where money
mm,
goes in and
mm,
money comes out,
mm,
and you're able to
mm,
show a monetary gain off of that, like a
mm.
just some percent return.
Sure,
And then to that, how do you measure that? How do you then increase
sure,
this over time? And then to that, how do you understand what the capacity is? Like, what is your theoretical limit of how many you can serve at a specific time?
exactly, exactly. I mean, Matthew, customer lifetime value, lifetime.
That's exactly what they're looking for. Yeah.
It's life.
Yeah.
It's not a transaction. Fantastic. Thank you. I enjoyed it as always.
Yeah, it was great talking. For everybody that has questions about, if you have any further questions about like what venture capital is, or if you just have some questions, or maybe even some comments, maybe even ideas what you'd like for us to talk about, make sure to leave a message below, and we'll take a look at it. And until the
Cool.
next time, see you next time.
Yes, 100%. And there's nothing, there's no stupid questions. So any question is
Any
welcome.
question?